Hello and welcome to another episode of the Pixelated Podcast. I am your host, Patrick Reif, and we are in season 3. And I'm excited because we have another excellent interview teed up for you today. Guys, we're going to be talking to Lydia Forth. I connected with Lydia recently over LinkedIn. It's where I do a lot of my prospecting for interview guests for the Pixelated Podcast. For any of you who have been listening over the years, know we really love to find all kinds of people inside of the whole kind of events and marketing ecosystem and chat with them. I firmly believe that the really interesting details lie in all of the kind of subgenres and different roles, and I love getting a chance to chat with people about that stuff. So, without further ado, Lydia, welcome to the Pixelated Podcast.
Thanks, Patrick. Happy to be here.
Yeah, we're super happy to have you. So, as we've talked about a little bit, I have some questions teed up for sure. We're going to talk about some good stuff today, hear a little bit about your background, talk a little bit about the BizBash event that you were just at. But before we go there, why don't you let everyone know listening, just give us, 30, 60 seconds about kind of your background and a little bit about how you ended up here.
Yeah, so I studied film production in college, wanted to make movies, but also worked in events in college and really enjoyed that. And my professor introduced me to the world of event production. And so got my first job out of school with the Q Center as an associate producer, supporting the producing team. And then was quickly promoted to producer and have been supporting events ever since. So my team specifically works on the production side, so all the audiovisual that goes into general session spaces and beyond, but we're full service creative agency. So also, thinking through print, decals, how we can brand the space, and any kind of creative installations as well.
That's awesome. That's great. So, and Q Center is where?
Q Center is in St. Charles, Illinois. It's about 35 minutes from O'Hare, so out of Chicago area. And my team is a little bit unique. So Q Center is a conference and hotel center, and we're the in-house production team, but we actually travel with our clients all over. So people often meet us there when they have their conference there. But because we're a significant step up from regular hotel AV, they like working with us. And a lot of times they're like, hey, we actually have already booked our conference next year in Dallas. Would you guys come to Dallas with us? And so that's kind of how that relationship has grown.
And then is Q Creative, are those two connected, or has one evolved from the other?
So Q Creative is the production team. That's the name of my team. Yep.
That's great. And if I remember correctly, you did something in between those two. Is that correct?
I did, yep. So I left for about 9 months. I went to a marketing agency, which was really fun. I wanted to really test my video chops and my podcast chops specifically. And so went to a video marketing agency and built up their their video business, started their podcast for them. But I really missed the event world, which is funny to say because people who are in the event world know how long the hours are. But, if you love it, you stick with it. So came back to Q in January of this year to be back in the event world.
So what I'd love to touch on first, and I told you I was going to start ignoring questions because my curiosity would take over. So I apologize, but I'd love to know a little bit about when you came back to Q, right? What were those hardcore, because I think that from a production side, right? I mean, you produce content, right? And producing content is challenging for a ton of reasons. Producing video content is additionally challenging because the standardization of what the expectation is grows so much, right? We're mostly forming in widescreen, but we need to serve it in tall screen, right? The way that closed captioning became so important, not for the reasons that closed captioning was invented for at all, but because people watch content and they can't have the volume on their phones on, so they have to do it.
Yeah.
So that workload, and I'm in it all the time here producing podcasts and content for Pixelated. It's a lot to do. And I imagine that your time at the agency kind of on the editing floor really got your chop. I mean, that need to not be precious and to be workmanlike, workwoman-like, workperson-like in the actual just the work, the stuff.
Yeah.
So sorry to be too exaggerating in it, but I'd love to know, because there are probably some really strong points of view and skills that you were able to bring back into Q that helped to regiment things.
Yeah, I mean, I did a lot of video production at Q before I left, but not a lot for social. So it was a lot more for like those super wide screens that we're building in ballrooms and those kinds of things. So custom screen sizes, custom content. We work with a lot of corporate clients, so it was a lot of representing corporate and those kinds of things. Lots of text on screen animation, and then switching to the agency was podcasts, social media, clips for LinkedIn. So like you said, all of those kind of things, shooting in widescreen, but thinking about the phone and the captions. And it was just about volume. It was like about sheer, like, get out as much as you can, post something every day if you can, multiple times a week. So coming back to Q, it definitely gave me a different sense of really how much is possible if you have a team that's willing to like work super hard, but also you have to have like a strategy and a plan throughout, and events are sometimes like one-offs. So there's a difference, I think, between like a show where you're having episodes and you're trying to produce content, and then like a one-off event where they need content, specific for that.
Yeah.
Does that kind of answer your question?
It does. Yeah, it absolutely does. And I think like, so to set up the next set of questions I have, help me understand you and your role in your team and kind of your current day to day. Like, what is your, what are the chunks of work types that are filling up the majority of your schedule, and like, how are you guys getting through that?
Yeah, so I'm a senior producer now, got promoted like about a month ago. So that just means that have more seniority over other people in the team, which just kind of relates to accounts. And so what gets what client accounts. And so we're supporting events both on property at Q Center and then remotely at other properties. So the day-to-day is a lot of calls, planning, coordinating lots of logistics, with scenic vendors and print vendors and AV vendors, and then a lot of client facing, making sure that we're ready from their side, going through agendas and everything, and then content as well. So really deep diving. Sometimes it's scripts, sometimes it's bullet points, diving into whatever it is that they give us to help create that content. So really, I think each day looks different depending on if I'm like fully in pre-production. Obviously, if you're working an event, it's those long event days that I'm sure most of the audience is familiar with, getting to the ballroom really early, making sure everything works correctly, supporting the general session, and then rehearsals in the evening. And then post-production is, wrapping up the event, doing a lot of editing of any content that was captured, and, packaging everything up for the client. So it kind of depends just on what day I'm in, what week I'm in. So for us, typically spring and fall are super busy. Summer's a little bit slower, and then winter, especially during Christmas time, is quite a bit slower. But this summer was a little unique. We actually had quite a bit of work this summer. I think live events are just coming back, and people are just trying to fit them in whenever they can.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I've been running, like Pixelated for 12 years, and there's always ebbs and flows in the events industry for sure, and a lot of them have been consistent over the first 9 years, but since since COVID, and I believe that we're pretty firmly in post COVID for all intents and purposes. Like, people don't feel the need to acknowledge it anymore, which is great. But also, like, there's still so much erraticness that exists inside of the events ecosystem, and I don't think that we necessarily obviously tie it back to it, but it's still clearly going through a lot of like undulations.
Absolutely. I would actually say, sorry to interrupt you, but
Go, please.
I would say that we were actually seeing the way events are planned, like, being changed by COVID. I think so much of it is like a little bit more last minute now. People are having trouble actually knowing how many people are going to attend their event, because so many people sign up at the last minute, which changes the budget and those kinds of things. And then, there are still times when, a presenter can't travel for whatever reason, or, their audience can't travel. And so we're then doing a lot of broadcasting someone in or broadcasting out to people watching. So I would say, even though it does feel like a post-COVID world, it's really changed kind of the way that events are planned.
I mean, I agree with you so totally and completely. It's amazing how last minute decisions are. And I think the other thing that's really true is, there was such an insane amount of capital that was deployed into event technology over the last 4 years, and so much of it was just like redundant technology being built, and for like this very um, very narrow channel of use. And I think everybody saw it as great. We'll create virtual tools and then we will grow them into being hybrid tools and we will grow to have time to do that. But the way that kind of things opened back up, it was so knee jerk, and it was like, it was like stop and go and stop and go. And then before we knew it, it was like, I don't think anyone in the event technology space expected to be flung back open in the same way that they were flung
Yeah.
shut. And what it did was it didn't really prepare any time to develop. I mean, really, like what we're talking about is planning for how the tools get used, making
Yep.
the minor adjustments to those tools so that way they're relevant in that space, and then more than anything, getting the marketing and the messaging out there to help our clients understand how they grow with them and they assist them. And the problem is, like in the events industry, it can be, pre-COVID, it was very slow to adopt new technology, very slow. So then all of a sudden you take this industry that had kind of not been that way and then had been forced to become that way because there was no other option. And like the fatigue was so great. And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden everyone is back behind the eight ball again. So, one of the things that I find interesting is you're right, like the playbook for how events happen is being rewritten again, except this time it's going to be for a much more long-term application, and it's going to actually reorganize the entire ecosystem. And and everybody's just exhausted, right? And the tools
Yep.
aren't there, and and now the economic environment, the capital isn't there because like for all of the big money that flew into it, and we're just watching these absolute juggernaut companies that became the biggest companies in the world over the pandemic are selling for, I mean, dramatic fractions of what they were worth, 18, 20 months ago. So, sorry, that was more of a spiel than a question, but
No, that's
I
good.
agree, I really agree with you,
Yeah.
Lydia. Like it is staggering how the change is happening, and what we try to do to adjust to it is we're trying to make sure that we have these products that people need on a regular basis. But rather than having them always be something where there's like this individual kind of like mom and pop contractor, and those people and those businesses are great, but there are lots of big organizations that would really benefit from having like a scaled solution for capturing photos that is the same everywhere they need it. So whether they're shipping it to a conference in like San Diego, or whether they're doing like a mom and pop, like the corporate office thing in Boise, Idaho, they those solutions, and they're certainly far greater than ours, right? Like technology has allowed it so that way the event planners on site can have so much more power in their hands without needing to be rewriting the story every single time. Like you guys need repeatable tools just as much as everyone else does that you can rely on
Absolutely.
and say like, this is how we execute great events. Like we use this and this, and
Right.
like it gets us 80% of the way there.
Yep. Yeah, and it's interesting too, like thinking beyond even the tech that we use, but the data that's being collected and how that data is being used. I think there's a big lack of actually using data that's being collected about attendees effectively. And obviously we can get into like data privacy and those kinds of things, but I do feel like so much of like apps and hybrid events are collecting data about attendees and then nothing's ever done with that. But event planners could really use that information to change what they like plan for the future. They can probably tell from different apps. I don't know exactly what apps people are using, but they can probably, gather a lot of information about like what events people are attending, what sessions are they attending, what are they not attending, how long are people staying at breaks, at lunch, all of those kinds of things. And if just by leveraging the data that's already being collected, I think people could really see an impact on, overall enjoyment of the session because people are finding it to like actually hit on what they care about.
Yeah.
But you have to have a partner or someone that helps you understand the data because it is at just ultimately it's data if you don't know what it means.
You're totally right. And like one of my, I don't want to call it a gripe, my observation, right, is right, whether it's AI or whether it was NFTs or whether it was virtual events or it was all this stuff, is we've got this culturally, right? We have this desire to be talking about the new thing, right? And it's
Yep.
like I don't care, but like, did you know about peanut butter? And I put it on everything. Like I put peanut butter on everything, and peanut butter makes everything better. So like, oh, like I'm a peanut butter consultant, like I'm a peanut butter solutions expert. And we end up so often um, like slathering peanut butter on everything instead of being like, where is the peanut butter gonna let's just slide it in slowly, right? Like
Hmm.
let's think
Hmm.
about and to that end, like an example of that is AI everything right now. Let's move it. We'll leave the peanut butter alone. We'll go to AI, right?
Yep.
AI is amazing, and people are talking about all the way that AI is going to change every single industry. But like what would benefit us much more is a single person integrating AI. Like maybe that's part of their story to say like we're able to accomplish this with the help of AI. But like far more important is like a company. I don't know if you know Nick Borelli or not, but Nick was on recently. He works with a company called Zenus, and they're creating these these little pieces of hardware that go on the podium, and they go in the corner of like a trade show booth, and they record sentiment. They're not taking a picture of your face, but it's recording when your eyebrows move up, right? Or when you get a
Yeah.
smile on your face, or when your shoulders pitch forward and you're down. Like it's taking all of that stuff and it's using it in real quantitative ways, right? Where it's just not, well, we got AR in our booth, or we've got like, it's instead saying like, how are we actually using this? And we'd be so much better off if there was more space to think critically about how this might actually come in and complement what we're doing, as opposed to being like, well, have you added that element yet? Because if you haven't, like you're probably missing out. And like most people are like, they don't even know the basics about it, as opposed to
Right.
where it even actually would help them be better at what they do.
Which is understandable. You can't expect people to like just know how to use AI out of nowhere, and yeah, not understanding. I think I'm still questioning like where is AI going to transform the event industry and specifically event professionals? Like where is it going to make our lives easier, but also where is it not? Because I think people are saying like, oh, have it write your agenda, have it do this, like ask ChatGPT to write all of your session descriptions. And it's like, yeah, that's great. That takes some work off of people. You probably have to do some editing, but is that the only solution? What really is? And I think, at least for me, I'm looking to other people probably to tell me what the best place that AI can be used, like you're saying, and really find how it can transform the business in the industry, instead of just here's a couple cool things it can do. It can make a picture for you, but is that gonna, you really have to be able to, right now at least, put in the prompt that you really want, which I think probably a lot of people in the event industry would laugh about. Our clients have to be able to describe to us exactly what they want for AI to give it to them, and I don't think they're quite there yet. So
Yeah, sure.
we're safe for now. But yeah, I don't know. I'm curious as well. We're all looking to see what the future will hold with AI.
See what happens. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. So gosh, I have two like forks, and I got to pick which one. I want to before I go to fork B. I want to make sure I'm curious about. So right, like you are a content producer, you work with video a lot, you produce these big client shows, and 5 years ago it was probably 90, if not more, percent all about getting that content together and getting your playbook together, so that way when the event goes live, everything is ready to go, and then like you execute it like rock stars, and then when you're done you're like, we did it, and that's that. And now we're at a place where if you're doing it right at all, you're definitely recording everything to at least be able to repurpose it post event. And if you're doing it really great, it's also maybe feeding into some kind of community that is all of you, like the very small percentage of people that realize that like COVID was an opportunity to actually just build a bigger audience and have two sides of it, and figure out not like this year we're virtual and this year we're in person, but instead like our people that can come and be with us in person and our greater community, and figuring out how like like that was, everyone was supposed to become a media empire, right? And that's impossible and really hard to do. But it's also like it sucks, but it's true. So I'm curious now, like how has that changed? Like are how much thinking are you doing about it? How much are you guys suggesting it to clients, and how much are clients coming in looking at it from you? Because I think it's really interesting, right? Like we know that we should be doing that, right? Like our clients are starting to catch up to it, but it takes a long time to turn a real big ship. And I'm
Yeah.
curious how much they're starting to realize it's an opportunity and wanting to plan for it.
It really depends on the client. So we do a lot of like internal only events. So it's specifically internal for that company. And so in that case, they do want to record everything, and they want to repurpose it for other stuff internal, but they're not trying to build a media empire, and they can't share things that are going to be said at the event. But even so, it is us like oftentimes encouraging them, like, you need to make sure you record this, like, and encouraging them to spend the extra budget to record, breakout spaces and things outside of maybe the room where they already have a lot of technology. Um, and then I think on the other side, where it's more external facing, it just depends on the client. Like some clients are super eager, they want to capture everything. A lot of clients have their own like media team already that is doing a lot of that work for them. And so really it's just, giving them an audio feed, getting them connected to what we're putting on screen. But yeah, I don't know what we're seeing, I guess, quite yet, just because so much of what I do is internal only. Yeah, I don't know how to answer that.
That's okay. That's all right. That I think that was a pretty good answer in and of itself. Because it is like it's very nuanced, and I think if you're working in pharma versus you're working with like a whatever a marketing or a hospital company or something along those lines, like it's going to vary. Internal, external, it's all going to change and have a lot to do with it. Um, I'm just always curious to kind of know when those ideas are soaking all the way into the biggest industries, because a lot of times, the largest companies can be the last ones to adopt things like that because they're just so big, and it takes a long time to, like you have somebody that's been the CEO of a healthcare system for 30 years and they're 65 years old. The idea of them becoming like a talking head CEO, even if it's great, is like, even if they can see it, like getting there is, that could be pretty hard. So that's the basis for the question, I guess.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot more just like behind the scenes type, like attend the conference with us type of content, like very TikTok style, being recorded and posted. And even that sometimes is posted like internally, like trying to encourage their people, like, you should have been here, come next time. Um,
Hmm.
but not quite as much of like the trying to become like a media company. But I mean, a lot of those CEOs are just in front of the camera all the time at that level. Like they just have to do interviews often. They have to, speak to great keynote speakers. They have to, get in front of the camera and talk to their people or whatever it might be. So it's not like a foreign world to them, I don't think.
Yeah, that's great. So I want to change direction here, and I want to chat a little bit, if you're open to it. Chat about your experience at BizBash Connect. So
Yeah.
anybody in the events world that's not living in a hole is familiar with the BizBash brand. They are gold standard when it comes to whatever, being a media empire, content distribution, really kind of calling out what's happening big and kind of how the events industry is evolving from a global perspective. And part of their work is they produce lots of events to help educate different sections of event professionals, buyers that are inside of the space, providers, the whole nine yards. So they recently had their Connect event, and Lydia, you went and checked it out.
Yeah.
So I'd love to. I have kind of like some specific questions that I really like to get, because knowing that a lot of our listeners are event professionals, I think that it would be kind of be cool to hear kind of what your goals were and how you prepared to accomplish them, and then also a little bit of like what it was like for you. But
Yeah.
so jumping off, like what were your is it your first BizBash event, and what were your goals with attending?
Yep, it was my first time attending. And yeah, the main goal is to just make people more aware of Q Creative specifically. So brand awareness, I think, was the main goal. And then just making new connections for anybody. Yeah, just clients. I mean, some specific key accounts, but any clients who really are looking for a production partner in the future. So yeah, it was a really great experience. I really enjoyed it. Haven't attended an event like that, so it was cool to attend an event that's all industry professionals, in my same industry. It was very like invigorating. I got very excited about the event industry and what's coming, and just seeing honestly the sheer volume of business that's out there.
Awesome. That's great. So were you just an attendee or did you guys table?
I was just a supplier, so we did appointments, but we didn't have an exhibiting booth. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So, in regards to that, how many? So, let's talk through like the table stakes of it.
Yep.
So you were hosting meetings. Those are all brokered for you in advance.
Yep. So if anybody's unfamiliar, you essentially like fill out a profile. It's almost like online dating, and then they match you up with people, and you can request people, and they can request you back. But there's a little bit of a connect doing the connections for you on the back end, and then you're given a 9-minute appointment with people. So it's like speed dating. You got to get in there fast, talk to them, and then you have 1 minute of transition time. And so the planners actually sit at tables, and then the suppliers are the ones who run around. So it's a little bit of a different experience. I think often it's the other way around, where the suppliers have a table and the planners have to move between them. So that was the experience, and it very new for me. I hadn't done anything like that before. Definitely have done pitching, have a 30-minute call with a client, walk them through our capabilities, but having to talk, in 9 minutes, try and learn about what their event is and how I fit into it, if at all, was a good challenge.
Yeah. So, like, we're gonna keep digging in here, okay? If you're all right with that, because I think
Yeah.
that this is really fun. Like, I I went to Event Tech Live in Las Vegas, and I met this awesome company that builds apps. I can't bring them to the top of my head. This is wrong of me because they were so nice to me. But they build the South by Southwest app and they build the Salesforce apps. Um, and I ended up, and they had their whole team there, and I ended up talking to their SDR, and I never get to like talk to like dyed in the wool roles like that. And I was just so like extremely nuanced in all my questions. I was like, "What is your cold outreach? Like, when do you LinkedIn? When do you do this? When do you do that?" And he was so nice in talking it to me. So that being said, how many total meetings did you end up having?
I got 23 scheduled, which from talking with other suppliers sounded like about the kind of magic number. So there was 44
Okay,
appointments available. It sounded like most of the planners had 40 or 44, and then suppliers were kind of in that 20 to 25 range. So there were definitely
great.
more planners there than, or more suppliers there than planners. Yeah.
Okay, break down the 9 minutes. How did you approach it?
Yeah, I tried to just introduce myself. I had like an iPad with some slides and just said like we're a creative agency, but also a full service production team. And I had studied people's profiles in advance, and so a lot of them had listed that they were looking for an AV company. So kind of said, I saw you're looking for an AV company. Tell me what you're looking for. And people would talk about. A lot of people talked about the terrible experiences they've had, which is understandable because hotel AV can be very difficult sometimes. And obviously, if the mics don't work or the screen stops working partway through, that sticks in the planner's mind as like, oh, that was a failure. So people kind of shared with me about those kinds of things, either a goal or a dream that they have, or something that didn't go right in the past, which allowed me then to talk about my team's like superior service on site and how we take care of the presenters, making super professional, keeping them super comfortable, and then how we make the planner a lot more comfortable as well by just them having confidence in us and knowing that we're taking care of that space so they can actually focus on the other areas of the event. So that's kind of like maybe the 60-second version of what I'd say. And then really based off of what they were interested in, I had a number of slides and got to kind of jump around in those based off of what they wanted. So some people have design in-house. They didn't want to talk about my design team. Totally understandable. We partner both ways. If they need design, we offer it. If they have a designer, their designer creates everything, and we provide all the technology for the screens it goes on and work, in tandem with them. And then talked about virtual and hybrid as well, and video production. So just depended on kind of the planner and what resources they have and what resources they're looking for.
Yeah. So for these leads that you're reaching out to, knowing that you guys are kind of location based, but can do other, were were these leads that you were anticipating coming to your town to do work, or is this work that you're looking for traveling with them and ideally like a bigger contract where you become their AV provider, their creative provider, wherever they are?
Yeah, so I traveled with our director of sales and marketing who was selling the property. So she had different appointments than me. And so I did talk about the property to anyone who was interested, but yeah, not really looking for people to have to come there to work with us since we
Yeah.
travel anywhere. And we use as much local labor as we can, need to keep costs down for people. So I think that gives us a competitive edge as well.
Yeah. So let's talk about conversions, and obviously, like they're far off. So like I'm sure there's no money in the bank, but how many of those conversations that you had would you say you think they're like they will continue in a meaningful way? Not saying that they'll close, but like of that
Yeah.
portion of leads that you had, how many are turning into warm leads?
It's hard to tell right now because it's only been a few days after the conference. I think I could probably say like five for sure. I think we'll turn into like a warm lead, maybe up to 10. We'll kind of just have to see. And from what I think will happen is, people might not need us right now. Their 2023 events are booked. Some of their early 2024 events, they've already signed a contract. They're working with the hotel AV. And so it may be end of 2024, early 2025. So that's a long time before we, like you said, see the money in the bank. But I think just making the connection and keeping the connection is valuable. And, my goal is to kind of check back in with them, hear how their events went in 2023 and 2024, and see if they're looking, to jump to a production partner. Really, honestly, when a hotel AV fails, that's like a good thing for me.
Yeah,
um,
that,
I don't want your hotel AV to fail for anyone. I really don't wish that on you because I know how stressful it is. But
if
when
it
you
does, I'm in there.
yeah, if it does, my team really cares. And there's a big difference, I think, between, the people who just provide gear and people who like care about making sure that your event goes off without a hitch. So
Got it.
obviously technology can fail any of us at any time. I'm not saying that you work with us and a mic will never like fail again, but we're going to do everything in our power to have backups and make sure that we're ready for
Yeah.
those kinds of situations. So yeah, I
No,
think I think a few are going to turn into warm leads. We'll see. Yeah.
that's great. I mean, experience is how you respond to the mic failing. Like
Right.
that's what you need. You can't, you want people with good processes and good equipment and good standards and operating procedures to mitigate, but you hire the pros based on how they're going to respond when all of that preparation gets, it gets tripped up somehow. That happens. And what we
Yeah.
do is we respond to it, and like that's where we win, like all day long. And honestly, like not even just for like you the AV company, but like I mean when something goes wrong on when the president is speaking to the country and something goes wrong and he responds in the appropriate way, right? And this isn't like a non-political statement. It's anyone. It's how you come back from something that trips you up that like is
Yeah.
endearing. It's like it's the good stuff. It's why it's why I do these interviews live and off the cuff instead of overly preparing, because like you and me are real people, and that's
Yeah.
okay.
And that's what they say about brand loyalty. Like people are much more loyal to a brand that they've actually had a problem with in the past. And that problem has been resolved correctly by whoever that brand is. And then their loyalty is built more so than a brand that they have purchased from for a really long time and never had an issue with. And so it's funny to even like talk about in this context because not that I want anything to go wrong for us either, but it really is about how you respond when something doesn't go as it was supposed to.
I love that. So I have to share really quickly with you. One of my business partner, one of the things that he says is, like obviously we don't want anything to ever go wrong, but he was like, but when something goes wrong and like this customer comes in like hot and heavy and like they've got this perception of whoever we are and how large we are, and then like you answer the phone and you're like, no, I own this company, like you're talking to, and then you can tell them every piece of nuance about their whole experience and you're addressing it and you're concerned about it, and then they like hang up the phone and they go and leave you a 5-star review. And it's all about that like sense of expectation, like being able to be accountable to a moment, like sometimes those moments forcing themselves onto the agenda isn't the worst thing in the world, because it really does give you the opportunity to show what you're made of, what's
Yeah.
important to you.
And I'm sure event
Um,
planners know that as well. Like I'm sure they have experienced things. It's just the way event industry is. Like something is going to go wrong throughout the time. You just know it's going to happen, and it really is about how you're able to pivot, able to respond, what backups you have in place, etc. So,
awesome. We're getting close to the end, but I have a question or two more that I want to sneak in here real quickly. So, first one is best three things about your BizBash Connect experience. What are your three call outs?
ooh, that's a good question. I really loved the trade show floor. So all the exhibitor booths I thought were really interesting. There was a lot of cities represented, so they're looking obviously for planners to come to their city, and I don't have business for them because I need the planner to bring me to their city as well. But it was really fun just to see the unique booths that they set up and the unique experience they created, and just the strategy that went into how do we get someone to stay in our booth and talk to us, not just have them walk by and give them a sticker or something, like get them to hang out and talk to us. There was a breast cancer research booth that was such a great installation. They interviewed breast cancer survivors and then their partners as well, or family members. And then basically in the booth, you would fill out a survey about how you feel about breast cancer research, and then you would watch the experience, and then you'd fill out the same survey, and they were basically just collecting data on like if the experience changes how you feel about research. But from a production standpoint and a content standpoint, just loved the way it was set up. It was vertical monitors and they were like the same height as me. So as I'm watching someone talk about their experience with breast cancer, it's like they're looking right at me and talking right to me, which I thought was such a great way to to show that content and create an experience that really like moved my heart. And I'm sure for many other people, especially because breast cancer is so common. And so probably most people have known someone who's been afflicted with that. So I really enjoyed that experience, and it was inspiring for me. But like, okay, how can I think about content in the future? Not just like, oh yeah, I need a wide screen and it needs to be set up the same way. Like, let's flip it vertically. And why would we do that? So that's one of the number ones. Sorry, I'm rambling here.
No.
The appointments were great as well. Like it was, like I said, it was my first time. So if I go back in the future, I think I'll have a much better understanding of what to do and what's successful and what's not. But it was great experience just to have to talk about us in such a short amount of time, but also listen, ask good questions, and kind of get to, what they're looking for, from the planner side. And then I just think the experience overall, like, because I haven't been to an event for event professionals, it was just invigorating. I know I already said that, but just made me excited about the industry. So often I'm like, working in my silo, just getting my work done, not talking to anybody. And that can be draining after an amount of time. So it was exciting just to see what other people are doing and to see so many people doing what I do. And just encouraging for sure.
That's awesome. This was great. This was really, really great. Gosh, what was my other? Oh, that's so here. The ultimate question, the last question. You're a young professional, right? In a world that changes a ton. Where are you learning from on a daily basis? Like, how are you continuing to educate yourself, stay abreast of things that are important? Feel like you're continuing to professionally develop, and like aside from going to events like BizBash and things like that, right? That's maybe once or twice a quarter. Like every day. How are you staying informed?
Oh, that's such a great question. I think that LinkedIn is like under leveraged to a certain extent. Like your LinkedIn feed just auto populates with the people that you are connected with, but going out and choosing like who you want to follow or what groups you want to join. There's so much that you can just learn from your LinkedIn feed if you have chosen to like curate it to a certain extent. Obviously, great to see what your connections are doing. But I think from like certain event groups I'm in and event professionals that I've chosen to follow, I've gotten a lot more ideas and stayed on top of things. And then LinkedIn Learning, I think, is really powerful as well. They have so many different courses in project management and all sorts of different tools that you can take in your spare time. So those are two big ones. And then really, I would say for me and my coworkers, so much of our inspiration comes from just what's happening in the world. So I'm a big Taylor Swift fan, and just going to her show this summer was so inspiring. Seeing all the production and the way that they thought through content was really fun for me personally, but also like bringing that into my professional life. My friends were like, "Will you shut up about the production?" And I was like, "I can't." It was so cool. And I know my coworker is like super into Beyonce, and so similar thing for her. Like we just get a lot of inspiration and really learn by seeing what other event professionals, especially content creators, are doing out there.
Yeah, yeah. I had Pixelated used to work with GNC, the health nutrition store, and one summer they took us to Bonnaroo,
Oh,
and being immersed inside of something and literally being there before the walls went up the day before, and then seeing it kind of like turn from a farm into this thing, and all the interconnectivity was like such a huge growth moment for me. Like my mind was just exploding constantly because everything was driven by these RFID wristbands that we had on, and we
yeah.
were like capturing photos and creating all these cool photo moments. And Bonnaroo is like a rich visual place. So all of a sudden, what we were only doing for GNC, I was like, wait, hold on. Like if we could build a system to capture photos through their entire ecosystem, but make it really part of the experience and have everybody be able to just like take a photo and scan their RFID and then keep going. And then when they like open the Bonnaroo app, like their 4 new photos are there, that it would like create this like awesome side of it. So that's great. It doesn't surprise me at all to hear that you were totally catalyzed by your Swifty experience, because
Yeah.
that's what great experiences do, right? They make us think. They like, I mean, whatever. Like every time I travel somewhere, I see all of these things in a different city, and I'm like, my city could implement that. Like that would be so cool. Like why does this not exist here? Like going to Austin or going to Portland, Oregon, and seeing all the food truck lots and being like, this is genius. And the overhead to start it is super low. Like you need an empty lot, crush and run, and electric, and then like we can do this, and some picnic tables. We can like do this. So I love that. Lydia, this has been great. I don't know if you feel like it's been as great as I feel like it is, but
It's
if you
been great.
do, I'll just say I told you so. But look, before we wrap up, let everyone listening know, like, how do they work with you? What's a good fit? How do they get in touch? All the details.
Absolutely. I think LinkedIn is probably one of the best ways to get a hold of me. So it's just Lydia Forth on LinkedIn. Easy to find me there. People can email as well. My email is just lydia.forth@qcenter.com. So pretty easy. Forth is spelled Forth. So it's like the number without the U. And yeah, I'm ready to connect and keep conversations going with anyone in the event industry or beyond, really.
Amazing. Lydia, on behalf of all of the Pixelated listeners out there, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to share your story, share your insights with us. Like, I know that there are people that are going to hear this episode, and it's going to help them a lot. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Patrick.
All right, guys, that's it. Another interview down on the Pixelated podcast. Again, all of Lydia's information is going to be in the show notes. So whether you're seeing this on YouTube or you're listening to it on a podcast, open up the notes. There'll be links to her LinkedIn and her email address, so that way you can get in touch with her. We try and make it as easy as possible. 2 things that I want to mention before we wrap up. The first thing is, if you're listening to the podcast and you enjoy it and you're already subscribed, please leave us a 5-star review. Your reviews help more event professionals find our podcast. Our whole goal is just telling people stories, sharing information, helping to make our event ecosystem a better informed place. So please do that. And if you are not yet subscribed, make sure you hit the subscribe button, whether you're watching on YouTube or you're following me on LinkedIn, or like you're jamming to this on Spotify on the way in. When you hit follow, that means that you'll get notified each time we publish a new episode. And our goal is to make sure that you hear the stuff that you like. So that's it. Another episode. I'm Patrick Ruck with Pixelated. Until next time, peace.